Single mother Sarah Cooper saved for years to give her twin daughters the perfect vacation, only for their joyful cruise to turn into a nightmare when they vanish without a trace. 11 months later, on a remote North Carolina beach, a mysterious suitcase washes ashore with horrifying contents and a silver lighter bearing enigmatic initials. As Sarah races against time through coastal towns and shadowy hideaways, she discovers a sinister network operating in plain sight and the terrible choice that separated her daughters forever. Before we begin, write in the comments where you're listening to our stories from. Subscribe to our channel, it's free and you can always change your mind. Enjoy the story. Chapter 1. Sarah Cooper sat in her dimly lit living room, surrounded by hundreds of missing person flyers bearing the smiling faces of her twin daughters. For 11 months, the search had yielded nothing but dead ends. Then her phone rang. "Mrs. Cooper?" "A fisherman found a suitcase washed up on Sandpiper Beach this morning. I need to warn you, what's inside is disturbing." Sarah's fingers tightened around her cell phone. "Detective Rivera, is it them?" Her voice cracked with the fragile hope she still desperately clung to. "We found remains," Detective Rivera said, his voice tight and controlled, "along with personal items that match the description of what your daughters were wearing when they disappeared. We need you to identify them." The living room seemed to tilt sideways. Sarah's knuckles turned white as she gripped the phone. "What kind of personal items?" she managed to whisper. "I can't explain everything over the phone," Rivera continued. "We're flying to North Carolina together. The evidence is being held at a forensic lab attached to the sheriff's department." After hanging up, Sarah noticed tears streaming down her cheeks. She moved mechanically through her small Boston apartment, packing an overnight bag. Her mind spun with memories from 11 months ago. The cruise she had saved for years to afford, a vacation meant to create lasting moments with her 8-year-old twin daughters. She remembered the restaurant where they'd stopped for a late lunch after swimming. It had been quiet, just past 3:30 p.m. with minimal staff. She'd left the girls for just 5 minutes to answer an important call from work where the reception was better. When she returned, Emma and Lily were gone. The restaurant staff had seen the twins leave but couldn't say where they had gone. The hours that followed were a blur of panic as Sarah frantically searched every corner of the massive ship. The cruise staff issued a ship-wide alert and launched an exhaustive search. They conducted cabin-to-cabin checks, reviewed security footage, and notified authorities. Despite their efforts, the twins vanished without a trace. A knock at the door jolted Sarah back to the present. She grabbed her bag and opened the door to find Detective Rivera standing there, his expression grave yet composed. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. Sarah nodded, locking her door as they walked to his unmarked police car. She steeled herself for what was to come. After 11 months of uncertainty, she was about to face a mother's worst nightmare, or perhaps find the first real clue to what happened to her daughters. The flight to North Carolina passed in tense silence. Sarah stared out the window, watching the landscape below change from urban sprawl to the coastal plains of the Outer Banks. Detective Rivera respected her space, reviewing case notes on his tablet while occasionally glancing her way. When they landed, a local officer met them and drove them to a modest sheriff's substation. The building was utilitarian, a single-story brick structure set back from the road, surrounded by pine trees that swayed in the coastal breeze. "The forensic materials from Sandpiper Beach were sent here," Rivera explained as they approached the entrance. "It's the nearest facility equipped to handle this kind of evidence." Inside, the air was cold and antiseptic, with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A sheriff's deputy guided them through a series of corridors to a back room. "Before we go in," Rivera said, stopping Sarah with a gentle hand on her arm, "I want you to prepare yourself. What you're about to see will be difficult." Sarah nodded, her throat too tight for words. They were given masks and sterile gowns as they entered the examination room. A weathered man in his 50s stood to one side, speaking quietly with an officer. His hands were rough and calloused, his skin tanned from years under the sun. "Mrs. Cooper," the sheriff said, "this is Peter Callahan, the fisherman who found the suitcase." "I'm sorry about your loss, ma'am," Callahan said, his expression a mix of sympathy and discomfort. "I wish I'd found something different that day." Sarah managed to nod before her attention was drawn to the center of the room. There, on a large stainless steel table, lay the suitcase, medium-sized, square, and clearly subjected to harsh elements. The once purple material was faded to a grayish hue, its seams warped from long exposure to salt and sun. A medical examiner stood nearby, waiting for their acknowledgement before proceeding. "Mrs. Cooper, we've documented everything as it was found," he explained. "I'll show you the contents now." Sarah braced herself, gripping the edge of a nearby counter as the examiner carefully lifted the lid of the suitcase. She gasped, tears immediately beating in her eyes. Inside lay the badly decomposed remains of a small child. The body had been wrapped in layers of clothing that preserved some identifying features. The victim appears to have died from asphyxiation, the medical examiner explained clinically. There is no evidence of blunt force trauma, no sharp injuries, no blood. This indicates the victim likely died quickly, but Sarah barely heard him. Her eyes were fixed on the faded pink unicorn t-shirt, the same one Emma had been wearing that day on the cruise. Partially visible beneath the decomposed remains was a pair of blue swim goggles with a small E sticker still visible on the side. "That's Emma's shirt," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "Those are her goggles. I bought matching sets for both girls, but Emma's had an E and Lily's had an L." The medical examiner nodded solemnly. "We'd like your permission to take a DNA sample from you for confirmation." "Yes, of course," Sarah agreed numbly. "But I don't need DNA to tell me that's my daughter." Detective Rivera placed a supportive hand on her shoulder as the examiner continued, showing her a separate evidence bag. "There was something else found with the remains," he said. "An item that doesn't appear to belong with a child's possessions." Inside the clear plastic bag was a silver Zippo lighter, tarnished by seawater but still intact. Engraved on its surface were the initials JS. Sarah stared at it, confusion momentarily breaking through her grief. "This doesn't belong to my daughters. They were 8 years old." "It's our first potential lead," Rivera noted, examining the lighter through the plastic. "An anomaly that could help us identify whoever did this." Sarah turned to the fisherman. "Mr. Callahan, where exactly did you find this?" The man shifted uncomfortably. "I was walking along the beach near my home, like I do most mornings. Noticed something washed up that didn't look like usual debris. When I got closer, I could smell, well, it wasn't good. I opened it just enough to see what was inside and called the police right away." "Was there anything else?" Sarah asked desperately. "Any sign of my other daughter, Lily?" Callahan shook his head. "Just the suitcase, ma'am. I'm sorry." The room fell silent as the weight of the situation pressed down on everyone present. One twin had been found, but what had happened to the other? And who was JS? Sarah looked at the suitcase again, a new determination forming through her shock and grief. If Emma was here, Lily might still be out there somewhere. And whoever had done this, whoever JS was, had left behind a clue. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice steadier than she expected. Detective Rivera's expression hardened with resolve. "Now we hunt down whoever did this, and we find your other daughter." Chapter 2. Why would someone put Emma in a suitcase and throw it into the ocean? Sarah struggled with the words. If they wanted to dispose of her, why not something that would sink? "That's a good question," the sheriff interjected. "This style of suitcase is made of a material that actually becomes somewhat buoyant when submerged. If the perpetrator didn't weight it down properly, it would eventually float to the surface and drift with the currents." "What happens now?" Sarah asked, looking between the officers. "We process all the evidence," Rivera explained. "The suitcase itself is an older model with distinct characteristics. Not many people use this type anymore. We'll track down where it was sold and try to identify who purchased it. Same with the Zippo lighter." The sheriff pointed to a partially peeled price sticker on the bottom of the lighter. "There's a store logo still visible here. It's not from any major chain that I recognize, but it might give us a lead." Sarah peered at the sticker, feeling a flicker of recognition. "That pattern seems familiar somehow, but I can't place it. May I take photos?" "Of course," the sheriff nodded. "We'll also send you digital copies of all evidence, photos, and reports." As Sarah took pictures, Rivera continued discussing the case with the local authorities. "With these findings, we're officially reclassifying this from a missing persons case to a homicide investigation," he stated. "We'll need to coordinate with the cruise line again, review all security footage, and re-interview key personnel. Our forensic team will complete their analysis of the remains and all items," the sheriff added. "We've already begun DNA testing." "Mrs. Cooper," Rivera turned to Sarah, "we'd like you to stay in the area for a few days. We'll need additional statements from you as the investigation progresses." Sarah wiped a tear from her cheek and straightened her shoulders. "I understand. Before I go to wherever I'm staying, I'd like to visit the beach where the suitcase was found." Rivera exchanged glances with the sheriff. "Are you sure that's wise?" "I need to see it," Sarah insisted, a new determination in her voice. "I need to stand in that spot if I'm ever going to find Lily." After a moment's consideration, Rivera nodded. "All right, I'll accompany you." "I can take you both there," Callahan offered. My boat's docked nearby, and some of the investigation team is still at the site. The journey to Sandpiper Beach took just under an hour by boat. Sarah sat at the bow, her face turned into the salt spray as Callahan navigated the choppy waters. Detective Rivera sat beside her, alternating between making calls to update his department and watching Sarah with concern. "It's just over there," Callahan called over the engine noise, pointing toward a stretch of shoreline ahead. "That's where I found it." As they approached, Sarah could see a small crowd gathered on the beach. Yellow police tape cordoned off a section of sand, and several officers moved about methodically, taking photographs and measurements. A news van was parked on a nearby access road, a reporter and cameraman standing at a respectful distance. Callahan guided the boat toward a small dock extending from the shore. Once secured, he helped Sarah and Detective Rivera disembark. "This way," he said, leading them down the dock and onto the beach. The sand was cool beneath Sarah's feet as they approached the cordoned-off area. An officer lifted the tape to allow them access, nodding in recognition to Detective Rivera. "Mrs. Cooper," the officer said solemnly, "we're very sorry for your loss." Sarah acknowledged him with a slight nod, her eyes fixed on the depression in the sand where the suitcase had been found. Though the actual suitcase had been removed, the investigators had preserved the site. "Right here," Callahan said, stopping at the edge of the depression. "This is exactly where I found it. The tide was going out, and it had just been left on the sand." Sarah stared at the spot, trying to process that this remote, beautiful stretch of beach was where her daughter's remains had come to rest. She crouched down, her fingers digging into the cool, damp sand. "There must be more evidence," she whispered, sifting the grains through her fingers. "Something else that could tell us where Lily is." Detective Rivera knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "The forensic team has been very thorough, Sarah. This is a significant lead after 11 months of searching. We'll find Lily, too." A few feet away, the news reporter had noticed their arrival and was speaking urgently to her cameraman. Rivera saw them and frowned. "Let me handle the press," he said, rising to his feet. "You take a moment here." As Rivera walked over to speak with the reporter, Callahan remained with Sarah. "There's accommodation not far from here," he said after a moment of respectful silence. "A small cabin resort where you could stay tonight before heading back to the mainland tomorrow. The owner's right over there, actually." He nodded toward a middle-aged man standing with the other onlookers beyond the police tape. Sarah wiped her eyes and stood up. "I think I'd like that. I don't want to leave just yet." "I understand," Callahan said kindly. "When my daughter went missing in a boating accident 5 years ago, I couldn't leave the harbor for weeks. Sometimes you need to be close to the last place they were." Sarah looked at him with sudden understanding. "Did you ever find her?" Callahan shook his head. "The sea keeps its secrets, but at least I know where to go when I want to talk to her." When Rivera returned, Sarah told him of her plan to stay overnight. He nodded thoughtfully. "That's fine, but I'm going to assign an officer to stay with you for protection until we know more. We need to be cautious." He called over a female officer who had been helping with the scene investigation. "Officer Morales will accompany you to the cabins and remain with you overnight." Sarah thanked him, then allowed Callahan to introduce her to the cabin owner, a genial man named Frank Wilson, who expressed his deep sympathies and assured her they had plenty of space. "It's not tourist season yet," Wilson explained as they walked the short distance to the cluster of beachfront cabins. "You'll have all the privacy you need." The cabin was simple but clean, a single room with a queen bed, small kitchenette and bathroom. A covered porch faced the ocean, with 2 Adirondack chairs positioned to watch the waves. After settling her things inside, Sarah found herself drawn to the porch. Officer Morales took up a discreet position nearby, giving her space while maintaining her protective watch. A young waitress brought Sarah a mug of coffee, offering it with a sympathetic smile. "Welcome drink on the house. I'm so sorry about your daughter." Sarah accepted the mug with murmured thanks, wrapping her cold fingers around its warmth as she sat watching the waves crash against the shore. The same ocean that had carried Emma's body to this beach continued its eternal rhythm, indifferent to human tragedy. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Sarah noticed movement from the cabin directly across from hers. A man emerged, checking his pockets before departure. He set his bag down on the small table outside his door while he locked up, then headed toward the resort's main office. Sarah noticed he had left something on the outdoor coffee table, a small metallic object catching the late afternoon sun. Curious, she walked over to check and found a cigarette package and a lighter. She picked them up, turning the lighter over in her hand. On the bottom was a price sticker with a store logo that matched the partial sticker from the evidence lighter. Sarah felt a chill run through her. Seeing the man still heading toward the front desk, she hurried to catch up with him, lighter in hand. "Excuse me," she called. "You forgot this." The man turned surprised, then smiled when he saw the lighter in his cigarette package. "Thanks, I would have missed that for sure." As he took it from her, Sarah pointed to the sticker. "If you don't mind me asking, where did you get this?" "I collect vintage lighters, and I've been looking for this brand." "Oh, it's from a little magazine kiosk in Greenville," he replied. "Small place, but they've got all sorts of odds and ends." "Does it have a name?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "Sinclair's Corner News, I think. It's run by this older guy who's always got some deal going on." "Why, you from around there?" "No, but there's a similar shop in Boston where I live," Sarah said, her heart beginning to race. "It might be the same chain." Before the man could respond, a staff member approached them, carrying a square suitcase identical to the one found on the beach. "Sir, are you sure you want to leave this behind?" the staff member asked. "We found it in your cabin." Sarah's eyes widened as she stared at the suitcase. It was the same color, same style, same size as the one that had contained Emma's remains. "Where did you get that?" The question burst from her before she could stop herself. The man chuckled. "Same place as the lighter, actually. The kiosk owner in Greenville sold it to me for next to nothing when I bought the lighter. Used it once, and the handle's already broken. Total junk. Shouldn't have wasted my money." Sarah swallowed hard. "Would you mind if I had it? I know it sounds strange, but—" "Take it," the man said with a dismissive wave. "Save me the trouble of disposing of it." "Thank you," Sarah said. "May I ask your name and contact information? I'd like to thank you properly." The man looked slightly confused but provided his details. "Name's Taylor Reed. Can I ask why you're so interested in my old junk?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I'm here with the police investigating my missing daughters. One of them was found in a suitcase just like this." Reed's expression shifted from confusion to horror. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." He shook his head. "I hope they find whoever did that. If there's anything else I can do to help—" "Thank you for the information about the kiosk," Sarah said. "It might be more helpful than you know." As Reed left to catch his ferry back to the mainland, Sarah returned to her cabin with the broken suitcase, her mind racing with possibilities. Officer Morales watched her curiously but didn't ask questions. Sarah set the suitcase down and reached for her phone, her fingers trembling slightly as she dialed Detective Rivera's number. Chapter 3. "I haven't left yet," Detective Rivera confirmed when Sarah called. "What's going on?" Sarah quickly explained about Reed's lighter and suitcase and the connection to a newspaper kiosk in Greenville. "I need to show you this immediately." "Stay where you are," Rivera instructed. "I'll come to you." 15 minutes later, Sarah stood at the shoreline with Officer Morales, waiting as Rivera approached the seaside cabin resort. The detective was deep in conversation with Peter Callahan, who had apparently joined him after their earlier departure. "Show me what you found," Rivera said without preamble. Sarah led him back to her cabin and showed him the suitcase, describing the lighter with its price sticker. The man said he bought both items from a magazine kiosk in Greenville called Sinclair's Corner News. Rivera's expression sharpened. "Sinclair? That's interesting." He grabbed his radio and contacted the station. "I need all available information on a business called Sinclair's Corner News in Greenville. Owner's name, address, business history, the works." While they waited for the information, Sarah explained how Reed had described the owner as an older guy who's always got some deal going on. "If the suitcase matches the one Emma was found in," Sarah said, "and the lighter has the same store sticker as the one with the initials JS, this can't be a coincidence." Rivera agreed, examining the suitcase closely. "This could be the break we needed." The radio crackled to life. "Detective Rivera, we've got that information for you. Sinclair's Corner News is owned by Jacob Sinclair, age 56. The business has 3 locations, the main one in Greenville, one in Charlotte, and a new location opening in Virginia Beach next month. Sending you the Greenville address and Sinclair's home address now." Rivera checked his phone as the information came through. "It's late afternoon, but we still have some daylight left. Let's go check out this kiosk." They boarded the police boat with Officer Morales and Callahan, who offered to navigate them back to the mainland. The return journey seemed faster, urgency driving them forward as the sun continued its westward descent. Once on the mainland, Rivera requisitioned a police vehicle, and they drove directly to the address provided for Sinclair's Corner News. The kiosk was a small, standalone structure in a strip mall parking lot, the kind of place that sold newspapers, magazines, lottery tickets, and a hodgepodge of convenience items. A thin man in his 30s stood behind the counter, arranging a display of cigarettes. He looked up as they entered, his expression neutral. "Can I help you? We're closing soon." Rivera showed his badge. Detective Rivera, Boston Police Department. Are you the owner of this establishment? The man shook his head. No, sir. I just work here. Mr. Sinclair is the owner. Is he around? Rivera asked. No, he's rarely here. Moves between the different locations, checking in maybe once a week at each place. Do you have contact information for him? The clerk hesitated. Sure, I guess so. He fumbled beneath the counter and produced a business card with a phone number and address. Do you sell Zippo lighters here? Sarah asked, stepping forward. The clerk nodded and gestured to a small display case near the register. Right here. Got a few different styles. Sarah and Rivera examined the lighters. They were identical to the one found with Emma, just with different designs and no initials. Rivera showed the clerk a photo of the evidence lighter on his phone. Have you seen this specific lighter before? It has the initials JS engraved on it. The clerk squinted at the image. We sell a lot of these, and customers sometimes get them engraved after purchase. But yeah, it looks like ours. Same brand, same model. What about suitcases? Sarah asked. Do you sell those here too? The clerk looked confused. No, ma'am. We're a newsstand, not a luggage shop. Sarah exchanged glances with Rivera. The tourist said he bought the suitcase here. The clerk shrugged. Maybe Mr. Sinclair sold him one of his personal items. He sometimes brings in odd stuff to sell on the side. I don't ask questions. Thank you for your help, Rivera said, taking the business card. If Mr. Sinclair comes in, please don't mention our visit. It's important for our investigation. Back in the car, Sarah suggested they drive by Sinclair's home address. Maybe we can get a look at the place, see if there's anything suspicious. Rivera nodded. We can do a drive-by, but I don't have a warrant to search the property yet. We'd need more evidence to get one. They drove through a quiet residential neighborhood of modest single-story homes with well-maintained yards. As they approached the address listed for Jacob Sinclair, they slowed down, observing the property from across the street. The house was unremarkable, a pale yellow bungalow with white trim and a neatly mowed lawn. A car sat in the driveway, its license plate partially visible. Look at that, Sarah said suddenly, pointing to the plate. The first letters are JS, just like the lighter. Rivera frowned. That's interesting, but we can't make assumptions. JS could stand for Jacob Sinclair, but it might be coincidental. They sat watching the house for several minutes, but there was no movement or sign of activity inside. I think we should head back to the station, Rivera finally decided. We need to coordinate with local authorities and develop a proper approach. If Sinclair's involved in what happened to your daughters, we need to be strategic. Sarah nodded reluctantly. I'm exhausted anyway. Could you drop me at the ferry station? I'll go back to the cabin for tonight. I'd rather not have you take the public ferry, Rivera said. Officer Morales can take you back in the police boat. It's safer and more discreet. They drove to the harbor where Officer Morales was waiting with the boat. As they approached the dock, Sarah suddenly grabbed Rivera's arm. That car, she exclaimed, pointing to a vehicle waiting in line for the ferry. It has the same license plate, JS. Rivera followed her gaze, his expression turning serious as he spotted the car. Through the tinted rear window, they could just make out the shapes of people inside. An adult and what appeared to be a child in the back seat. That could be anyone, Rivera cautioned. Let's not jump to conclusions. But Sarah was already moving toward the ferry line, drawn by an instinct she couldn't explain. I just want to see who's inside, she called back. Sarah, wait! Rivera hurried after her. But before he could stop her, Sarah had reached the ticketing officer who was checking each vehicle before allowing it onto the ferry. As she approached, she saw the driver's window rolled down to present tickets to the officer. In the back seat sat a child with an adult female. The child seemed agitated, squirming against the woman's restraining arm. From this distance, Sarah couldn't clearly see the child's face, but something about the girl's profile and hair color triggered a visceral recognition. Lily, she whispered, her heart pounding. That's Lily! Detective Rivera caught up to her, taking her arm. You can't just approach random vehicles. We don't have enough evidence. It's her, Sarah insisted, pulling away from his grip. I saw her face just for a second. That's my daughter. Rivera hesitated, then nodded to Officer Morales. Stay with Sarah. I'll speak with the ferry officer. He approached the ticket booth, speaking quietly with the officer who had been checking vehicles. The two men glanced toward the car with the JS license plate, which was now 3 vehicles away from boarding the ferry. After a brief conversation, Rivera returned to Sarah. They're going to do a secondary check on that car, just to be safe. Sarah watched anxiously as the line of cars inched forward. When the target vehicle reached the checkpoint, the ferry officer signaled for it to pull aside for additional verification. Through the tinted window, Sarah saw the driver speaking animatedly on a cell phone. Then suddenly the car doors flew open. A man in his 50s emerged from the driver's side, while a woman in her 30s got out from the back, pulling a young girl with her. "That's them," Sarah cried. "That's Lily." The trio began weaving between the waiting cars, the man leading the way, while the woman dragged the reluctant child behind her. Rivera immediately radioed for backup, his voice sharp with urgency. Suspects fleeing on foot at Sandpiper Harbor Ferry Terminal with possible kidnapping victim. Adult male, adult female, and female child approximately 8 years old. Request immediate assistance and perimeter setup. The harbor officer also radioed for additional security while Rivera turned to Sarah. "Stay with Officer Morales. We can't risk you getting hurt if they're dangerous." Before Sarah could protest, Rivera was sprinting toward the fleeing suspects, drawing his weapon but keeping it lowered. "Police! Stop where you are," he shouted. The man looked back, saw Rivera, and redoubled his pace, shouting something to the woman that Sarah couldn't hear. Within minutes, the ferry terminal erupted into controlled chaos. Police cruisers converged on the scene, blocking exits, while officers on foot pursued the fleeing suspects. Passengers waiting for the ferry were directed to secure areas, and the loading process was halted. Sarah and Officer Morales watched from a distance as the dragnet closed around the suspects. The man was tackled by 2 officers as he attempted to scale a security fence. The woman, still gripping the child's wrist, tried to duck between parked cars but was quickly surrounded by police with weapons drawn. "Let go of the girl," an officer commanded. The woman hesitated, then released her hold. The child immediately broke away, looking around frantically until her eyes landed on Sarah. Even from a distance, there was no mistaking the recognition that flashed across the girl's face. "Mom!" she screamed. "Mom!" Sarah broke free from Officer Morales and ran toward her daughter, meeting her halfway across the parking lot. She dropped to her knees, gathering Lily into her arms with a sob of relief and disbelief. "Lily, oh my God!" she cried, holding her daughter tightly, feeling the girl's thin body trembling against hers. Lily clung to her mother, sobbing incoherently, her words muffled against Sarah's shoulder. Rivera approached them, his expression a mix of relief and professional concern. "We've got them both in custody," he said quietly. "Sarah, we need to get you and Lily someplace safe while we process the suspects." Sarah nodded, unwilling to release her hold on her daughter. "Who are they?" "IDs identify them as Jacob Sinclair and Jessica Sanders," Rivera replied. "Husband and wife, according to their documentation." Sarah's eyes widened. "Jessica Sanders. The initials on the lighter? JS." Rivera nodded grimly. "We've impounded their vehicle and are obtaining a warrant to search it now. Preliminary inspection shows multiple suitcases in the trunk and some concerning materials in the back seat." Sarah looked down at Lily, seeing her for the first time since their reunion. The girl was frighteningly thin, her once fair skin unnaturally tanned as though she had been artificially darkened. Her hair had been cut shorter than Sarah had ever kept it, and her eyes held a weariness that no 8-year-old should possess. "She needs medical attention," Sarah said. "An ambulance is already on the way," Rivera assured her. Within minutes, paramedics had arrived and were examining Lily, who refused to let go of her mother's hand. The girl flinched at the bright pen light the paramedic used to check her pupils, turning her face away with a whimper. "Please stop taking pictures," she murmured. Sarah exchanged a worried glance with Rivera, who made a note of the comment. Meanwhile, officers conducting the search of the suspect's car emerged with grim expressions. One approached Rivera, speaking in a low voice. "We found 2 boxes of illegal magazines in the trunk," the officer reported. "Child-centered material and syringes with what appears to be a sedative in the back seat. Looks like they were preparing to drug her before boarding the ferry." Rivera's jaw tightened. "Get CSI on this immediately. Document everything." Sarah overheard enough to understand what they had found. Her grief over Emma transformed into white-hot rage as she watched Sinclair and Sanders being placed in separate police cruisers. Breaking away from Lily briefly, she strode toward Sinclair as officers were securing him in the vehicle. "You monster," she screamed. "You didn't just smuggle your filthy magazines. You murdered my daughter. You murdered Emma." Sinclair looked up, his expression disturbingly calm. "I didn't mean to kill the other one," he said matter-of-factly. "I wanted to keep both of them, but my partner backed out. I couldn't handle 2 children alone without getting caught. I had to make a choice." Sarah lunged toward him, but Rivera caught her, pulling her back. "Save it for the station, Sinclair," he growled at the suspect. "You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." As the cruisers pulled away, the paramedics approached with news about Lily. "She's been drugged with a mild sedative," one reported, "and there are signs of malnutrition and physical abuse. We need to transport her to the hospital immediately for a full examination and treatment." Sarah nodded, returning to her daughter's side. "I'm coming with her," she told Rivera. "Of course," he agreed. "I'll meet you at the hospital after we process the suspects. This is just the beginning, Sarah. We're going to need statements from both of you when Lily is stable." Sarah climbed into the ambulance beside her daughter, holding the girl's hand as the vehicle pulled away, sirens wailing. Despite the horror of what they had uncovered and the grief of Emma's confirmed death, Sarah felt a surge of fierce gratitude that at least one of her daughters had been found alive. "It's over, Lily," she whispered, stroking her daughter's hair. "You're safe now. They can't hurt you anymore." Lily's fingers tightened around hers, and for the first time since their reunion, a ghost of a smile touched her lips. She didn't speak, but her eyes said everything. She was home. She was safe. And for now, that was enough. Behind them, the sun finally slipped below the horizon, plunging the world into darkness. But for Sarah, a new dawn had already begun, one filled with both grief and hope, endings and beginnings, loss and recovery. The story wasn't over yet, but at least now they could begin to write a new chapter, together. Enjoying our stories? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our upcoming content. Now let's get back to our story. Chapter 4. The harsh fluorescent lighting of the hospital corridor made Sarah's eyes ache as she paced outside the emergency room. Officer Morales remained nearby, keeping a watchful eye on both Sarah and the hospital entrance. A nurse had gently but firmly asked Sarah to wait outside while the medical team conducted their initial examination of Lily, though it tore at her to be separated from her daughter so soon after finding her. Mrs. Cooper, the nurse who had been attending Lily, appeared in the doorway. "You can come in now." Sarah hurried into the room where Lily lay on a hospital bed, looking even smaller and more fragile against the white sheets. An IV drip fed clear liquid into her arm, and a doctor was making notes on a chart nearby. "Mom," Lily whispered, reaching out with her free hand. Sarah took it gently, careful not to disturb the IV. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." The doctor, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a serious expression, approached them. "Mrs. Cooper, I'm Dr. Patel. I've completed my initial examination of Lily." "How is she?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with anxiety. Dr. Patel's expression was grave. "Lily is suffering from malnutrition. She's significantly underweight for her age. There are multiple bruises on her back and legs consistent with physical discipline, likely from a narrow, flexible object like a rattan stick or thin belt." Sarah winced, squeezing Lily's hand gently. "There are also marks on her wrists and ankles," Dr. Patel continued, suggesting she was restrained for extended periods, possibly with zip ties or similar restraints. The doctor lowered her voice, though Lily seemed half asleep from the medications they'd given her. "She appears extremely sensitive to bright lights and camera flashes, which is consistent with being subjected to frequent photography. Based on her reactions during our examination and some comments she made, I'm concerned she may have been used as a model for inappropriate material." Sarah closed her eyes briefly, fighting back tears. "What's the treatment plan?" "We'll start with addressing the malnutrition through carefully monitored nutrition. The sedatives in her system should metabolize within 24 hours. Physically, she should recover relatively quickly with proper care." Dr. Patel's voice trailed off. "The psychological trauma, however, she'll need specialized therapy, Mrs. Cooper. This kind of experience leaves deep scars." Sarah nodded, determination settling in her expression. "She'll get everything she needs, whatever it takes." Dr. Patel squeezed her shoulder comfortingly. "She's a strong girl to have survived this, and having you here will make all the difference in her recovery." After the doctor left, Sarah pulled a chair close to Lily's bed and sat down, maintaining her gentle hold on her daughter's hand. Lily drifted in and out of sleep, occasionally muttering words that Sarah couldn't quite catch. Hours passed this way, with nurses coming and going, checking vitals and adjusting Lily's AV. Outside the window, night had fallen completely when Detective Rivera appeared in the doorway. "How is she?" he asked quietly, noting Lily's sleeping form. Sarah gestured for him to join her in the corridor. "Physically, she'll recover," she said once they were outside. "Emotionally, it's going to be a long road." Rivera nodded grimly. "I have updates from the interrogation. Sinclair isn't talking much, but Sanders is cooperating. She's looking to cut a deal." "What has she told you?" Sarah asked. "A lot," Rivera said, rubbing his tired eyes. "Sinclair and Sanders weren't acting alone. They were part of a larger operation that produces and distributes illegal magazines featuring children. Sinclair would provide the children, and others would handle the production." Sarah felt sick. "How many children are we talking about?" "Based on Sanders' statement, we believe there are at least 7 others currently being held at a property Sinclair owns under a different name. We've got teams moving on that location now. And what about my daughters? How did he get to them on the cruise? Rivera sighed heavily. According to Sanders, Sinclair boarded the cruise under a fake name, using a prepaid card and burner email. He disguised himself as part of the ship's maintenance crew by stealing a uniform from a storage closet early in the trip. He also used a small electronic device to temporarily disable the security camera near where he took the girls. Sarah leaned against the wall trying to process this information. But how did he get them to go with him? My girls knew better than to go with strangers. Sanders said he'd been watching them earlier in the cruise. He saw them enjoying one of the magic shows and used that to his advantage. When he encountered them alone, he performed a simple card trick he'd learned from watching the ship's magician. Once he gained their trust, he led them to a crew hallway where there were fewer cameras. Sarah closed her eyes, imagining her trusting daughters following a kind man who showed them magic tricks. And Emma, what happened to her? Rivera's expression darkened. Sanders wasn't there for that part, but from what Sinclair told her later, he had originally planned to take both girls. But his partner at the time, not Sanders, backed out when he realized they were twins. Apparently, keeping two children would have been too risky and complicated. So Sinclair... Rivera paused. He suffocated her, Sarah finished, her voice hollow. No struggle, no blood, no noise. Rivera nodded solemnly. He wrapped her in her clothes, placed her in the suitcase, and disposed of it overboard that night from an unsecured deck area where waste is sometimes jettisoned. Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting back a sob. And Lily? How did he get her off the ship? He kept her hidden in his cabin bathroom until they docked in Key West the next morning. He drugged her just enough to keep her compliant but responsive and threatened her about Emma. When they disembarked, he used disguises, sunglasses, fake beard, different clothes, and exited during the early morning rush when most attention was on families with children. Rivera continued, according to Sanders, Sinclair had prepared fake documentation for Lily. They've been moving her between different locations from Key West up through Florida and finally to North Carolina to avoid detection. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. They were in Boston before the cruise. Was he stalking us before this happened? Rivera nodded grimly. Sanders confirmed that Sinclair traveled often and had mentioned seeing beautiful twin girls in Boston that would be perfect for their next edition. We believe he may have spotted you and your daughters before the cruise and planned this specifically. Sarah felt a chill run through her. What about the lighter with JS on it? Was that intentional? Just a coincidence, apparently. Sanders said it was her personal lighter that got mixed up with Emma's things when Sinclair was rushing to dispose of the body. She'd been looking for it for months. Sarah glanced back at the hospital room where Lily slept. We have to make sure they never get out. And all those magazines, they need to be destroyed. Those children don't deserve to have their trauma circulating forever. Rivera nodded firmly. We're working with federal authorities now. This is bigger than just one case. But I promise you, Sinclair and Sanders will pay for what they did to your family. He placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. You should get some rest. We'll need you at full strength when she wakes up. Sarah nodded, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Thank you, Detective, for everything. As Rivera left, Sarah returned to Lily's bedside, settling into the uncomfortable hospital chair for what would likely be a long night. Despite the horror of what she had learned, she felt a sense of grim satisfaction that the perpetrators had been caught and a flicker of hope that her surviving daughter was finally safe. Early morning sunlight filtered through the thin hospital curtains as Sarah blinked awake, her neck stiff from sleeping in the chair beside Lily's bed. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back. She sat up quickly, checking on her daughter. Lily was still asleep, looking slightly less pale than the night before. The IV drip had been replaced overnight, and a tray with bland hospital breakfast sat untouched on the side table. A soft knock at the door drew her attention. A nurse entered, followed by Dr. Patel. Good morning, Dr. Patel said quietly. How did she sleep? Restlessly, Sarah replied. She had nightmares, kept talking in her sleep. Dr. Patel nodded as she examined Lily's chart. That's to be expected. The sedatives they were giving her are working their way out of her system. We'd like to run some additional tests today, with your permission, of course. Sarah agreed. Whatever she needs. As the doctor continued her examination, Officer Morales appeared in the doorway, looking like she too had spent an uncomfortable night in a chair. Mrs. Cooper, she said, Detective Rivera called. He's on his way here with an update. Sarah nodded gratefully. Thank you for staying all night. Morales offered a tired smile. Just doing my job, ma'am. Though I have to admit, I've never seen a case like this in all my years on the force. You're one lucky woman to have found your daughter alive after all this time." Sarah looked down at Lily's sleeping form. "If I were lucky, I wouldn't have lost either of my daughters to begin with." Morales' expression softened. "I'm sorry, that was insensitive of me." "No," Sarah sighed. "You're right in a way. Many parents never get closure, never find their missing children. At least I have Lily back, and I know what happened to Emma." Her voice broke slightly. "It's a bitter kind of luck, but it's something." Dr. Patel finished her examination and turned to Sarah. "Lily's vital signs are improving. The lab tests show the sedatives are clearing from her system, but she's still severely malnourished. We'll start her on a carefully monitored diet today." "When can I take her home?" Sarah asked. "Not for at least a few days," Dr. Patel replied. "We need to stabilize her physically and begin a psychological assessment before discharge. And even then, she'll need ongoing care." Sarah nodded, accepting the long road ahead. About an hour later, Lily began to stir. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion clouding them briefly before focusing on Sarah. "Mom," she whispered, as if afraid believing it might make the vision disappear. "I'm here, sweetheart," Sarah said, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. "You're safe now." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Emma, where's Emma?" Sarah swallowed hard, unsure how to explain to an 8-year-old that her twin sister had been murdered. Before she could form a response, Detective Rivera appeared in the doorway, his expression solemn but satisfied. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. Sarah nodded, grateful for the momentary reprieve from answering Lily's question. Rivera entered, taking off his hat respectfully. "Good morning, Sarah." "Hello," he said to Lily, his voice gentle. "I'm Detective Rivera. I've been helping your mom look for you." Lily regarded him warily, instinctively shrinking against her mother. "It's okay," Sarah assured her. "Detective Rivera is one of the good guys." Rivera kept a respectful distance, his voice calm and gentle. "I thought you'd want to know we conducted a raid early this morning on another property owned by Jacob Sinclair. It was on Pine Island, the place he planned to take Lily yesterday, according to what we gathered from the ferry station. We rescued 7 more children who were being held there." Sarah gasped. "Are they all right?" "They're receiving medical attention now," Rivera said. "Some have been missing for over a year. We're working on identifying them all and contacting their families." Sarah felt a surge of fierce satisfaction. "What about Sinclair and Sanders? Are they talking?" "Sanders has given a full confession in exchange for leniency at sentencing," Rivera confirmed. "She said she couldn't live with the guilt any longer. She always knew it was wrong, even though she helped coordinate things for her husband. Sinclair is still being uncooperative, but with Sanders' testimony and the evidence we've gathered, he's now facing multiple life sentences." "Good, dear," Sarah said firmly. "I hope they rot behind bars for a long time. Even the wife, she still helped keep my daughter captive for months. She still participated in—" She couldn't bring herself to finish the sentence. "She'll face substantial charges," Rivera assured her. "Cooperation may reduce her sentence, but she won't walk free." Sarah glanced back at Lily. "What happens now?" "We'll need a formal statement from you, and eventually, when she's ready, from Lily as well. But there's no rush on that. Her recovery comes first." Sarah nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Detective, for everything." "I'm just glad we found her," Rivera said sincerely. "In all my years on the job, cases like this rarely end with the child coming home alive." After Rivera left, Sarah returned to Lily's bedside. The girl was awake again, watching her mother with an intensity that spoke volumes about her fear of being separated again. "Mom," she said in a small voice, "Emma's gone, isn't she? Really gone?" Sarah took a deep breath and sat down, taking Lily's hand in hers. "Yes, sweetheart. Emma is gone. The bad man hurt her very badly." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "I knew it. He told me she was gone, but I didn't want to believe him. I kept thinking she might be somewhere else, like me. That maybe you'd find both of us." "I wish we had," Sarah said, her own tears falling freely now. "I looked for both of you every single day. I never stopped." "I was so scared," Lily whispered. "After they took us and Emma was gone, they kept moving me to different places. They changed how I looked. They made me stand still while they took pictures, and if I cried, they would hit me. They said if I tried to run away or tell anyone, they would hurt you too." Sarah gathered her daughter carefully in her arms, mindful of the IV. "You were so brave, so brave, and you don't have to be scared anymore. Those people are going to jail for a very long time. They can never hurt you or anyone else again." For a long time, mother and daughter simply held each other, sharing their grief for Emma and their relief at being reunited. Eventually, medication began to make Lily drowsy again, and she drifted off to sleep in Sarah's arms. As Sarah gently laid her daughter back against the pillows, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. A small scar near Lily's hairline, likely from one of the many abuses she had suffered over the past 11 months. It was a visible reminder of all that had been taken from her daughter, her innocence, her sense of security, her twin sister. But looking at Lily's sleeping face, Sarah also saw strength there, the same determined spirit that had helped her survive her ordeal. Sarah knew it would be a long road to recovery, filled with therapy sessions, nightmares, and painful memories. There would be a funeral for Emma and days when grief would overwhelm them both. Yet as she watched her daughter sleep, Sarah found herself thinking of a conversation she'd had with Peter Callahan on the beach. He had lost his daughter to the sea, but still found a way to keep moving forward, to find meaning in his loss. Sarah realized that in some ways, she and Lily were now like Callahan, forever changed by loss, but not defined by it. "We're going to get through this," she whispered to Lily, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "One day at a time." Outside the window, storm clouds were gathering, dark and ominous over the ocean. A nurse came in to check Lily's vitals and mentioned that a severe thunderstorm was expected to hit the coast by evening. "They'll be moving Sinclair and Sanders to the county jail before the storm hits," the nurse added. "My husband's on the police force. The whole town's talking about it." Sarah nodded absently, her attention fixed on Lily, who was beginning to stir restlessly in her sleep, her face contorting with what seemed to be a nightmare. "No, please, not the pictures. Emma, help!" Lily murmured, her hands twitching against the sheets. "Shh, it's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now," Sarah soothed, gently stroking her daughter's hair until the nightmare seemed to pass. The nurse watched sympathetically. "She's been through so much, but children are resilient. With the right support and a lot of love, they can heal from almost anything." As the nurse left, Sarah found herself hoping those words were true. Because despite the arrests, despite the justice that would come, nothing could erase what had happened to her daughters. Nothing could bring Emma back. Sarah leaned back in her chair, suddenly overwhelmed by the magnitude of what lay ahead. Grief for Emma, healing for Lily, justice for both, and somehow a way forward for herself, a mother forever torn between mourning one child and helping the other rebuild her life. Outside, the first raindrops began to patter against the window, a gentle prelude to the storm to come. Sarah closed her eyes and listened to the rhythm, finding in it a strange comfort. Like the rain, her tears would eventually stop. Like the clouds, the darkness would eventually pass. And like Lily, she would find a way to survive this storm. Chapter 5. 3 days after Lily's rescue, the hospital staff deemed her stable enough for discharge. Dr. Patel had arranged for them to meet with a child psychologist, Dr. Meredith Hayes, who specialized in trauma recovery for young victims of abuse. Sarah sat with Lily in Dr. Hayes' office, a warm space filled with soft colors, comfortable furniture, and shelves lined with toys and books. "Lily, I'm very glad to meet you," Dr. Hayes said, her voice gentle but not condescending. "Your mom tells me you've been very brave." Lily looked down at her hands, saying nothing. "It's okay if you don't want to talk today," Dr. Hayes continued. "We can just get to know each other a little bit." Sarah squeezed Lily's hand reassuringly. "Can I show you something?" Dr. Hayes asked, pulling a worn teddy bear from her desk drawer. "This is Bernie. He sits with all my special visitors. Sometimes, when it's hard to talk, Bernie helps. Would you like to hold him?" Lily hesitated, then nodded slightly. Dr. Hayes handed her the bear, which Lily clutched tightly to her chest. "Mrs. Cooper, I'd like to explain my approach before we proceed," Dr. Hayes said, turning to Sarah. "Trauma recovery, especially in children, isn't linear. There will be good days and difficult days. The goal is to provide Lily with tools to process her experiences gradually, at her own pace, while rebuilding a sense of safety and normalcy." Sarah nodded. "Whatever she needs. How often should we come?" "I recommend twice a week to start. We'll adjust as needed." Dr. Hayes smiled warmly at Lily. "And sometimes we might just play games or read stories. Every session doesn't have to be heavy." For the first time since entering the office, Lily looked up. "Can I draw pictures?" "Absolutely," Dr. Hayes responded. "I have all kinds of art supplies. Would you like to draw something now?" Lily nodded, and Dr. Hayes led her to a small table set up with colored pencils, crayons, and paper. As Lily began to draw, Dr. Hayes motioned for Sarah to join her in a conversation area nearby, still within Lily's sight but allowing for some privacy. "How are you holding up?" Dr. Hayes asked quietly. Sarah sighed. "I haven't had time to process it all. I'm focused on Lily." That's understandable, but your well-being matters too. Trauma affects the entire family. Dr. Hayes handed Sarah a card. This is a colleague of mine who works with parents of traumatized children. I'd recommend seeing her yourself. Sarah took the card, tucking it into her purse. Thank you. We're still living in a hotel. I need to get us back to Boston, back to some kind of routine. That's actually a good instinct, Dr. Hayes said. Structure and routine help rebuild a sense of security, but don't rush the transition. Take it slow. They both glanced over at Lily, who was intently focused on her drawing, the tip of her tongue peeking out in concentration, a mannerism she'd had since she was a toddler. The sight brought a lump to Sarah's throat. Despite everything that had happened, glimpses of her daughter's true self remained. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Sarah and Lily returned to Boston, where they were met with a media frenzy that Sarah did her best to shield Lily from. Detective Rivera had arranged for a police escort from the airport to their apartment and advised them to stay inside as much as possible until the public interest died down. Their apartment felt both familiar and strange. Sarah had kept it exactly as it was the day the twins disappeared, a frozen memorial to her lost children. Now it felt like a museum of grief, with Emma's belongings creating painful reminders in every corner. The night they returned, Sarah found Lily standing in the doorway of the bedroom she had shared with Emma, unable to step inside. I can't sleep there, Lily whispered, tears streaming down her face. Not without Emma. Sarah knelt beside her. You don't have to, sweetheart. You can sleep in my room as long as you want. That night, and for many nights after, Lily slept curled against Sarah, often waking with nightmares that left her shaking and inconsolable. Sometimes she called out for Emma. Other times she begged unseen tormentors to stop hurting her. All Sarah could do was hold her, assuring her she was safe now. 2 weeks after their return, Sarah began the painful process of planning Emma's funeral. The medical examiner had finally released Emma's remains, and Sarah struggled with decisions no parent should ever have to make. Cremation or burial? What kind of service? What would Emma have wanted? One evening, as she sat at the kitchen table surrounded by funeral home brochures, Lily appeared beside her, clutching Bernie the bear that Dr. Hayes had given her. Can I help? She asked in a small voice. Sarah hesitated, unsure if involving Lily would help or harm her recovery. Are you sure, sweetheart? This is about planning a funeral for Emma. Lily nodded solemnly. She was my sister. I want to help say goodbye. With tear-filled eyes, Sarah pulled out a chair for her daughter. Together, they decided on a small, private memorial service with a butterfly release, something 8-year-old Emma would have loved. She liked the yellow ones best, Lily said, pointing to a photo of monarch butterflies in one of the brochures. She always said they looked like flying sunshine. Sarah hadn't known that. It was one of the countless small details about her daughter's inner worlds that she now realized she'd missed or forgotten in the hustle of single motherhood. The realization brought both pain and a strange comfort. Lily carried parts of Emma with her that Sarah never knew. The day of Emma's memorial arrived with unexpected sunshine after a week of rain. Sarah had chosen a small garden pavilion in a local park, away from prying eyes and media attention. Only a handful of people attended, close family friends, Sarah's parents who had flown in from Arizona, Detective Rivera, and Dr. Hayes who had agreed to come for Lily's sake. Lily wore a yellow dress she had specifically requested, because Emma would like it. She clutched a small box containing the butterfly they would release in Emma's memory. The minister spoke briefly about the precious life of Emma Cooper, taken too soon, remembered always with love. Then Sarah stood to speak, her voice steady despite her grief. Emma was sunshine in human form, she began. She loved butterflies and magic tricks and making people laugh. She never met a puddle she didn't want to jump in or a person she didn't try to befriend. For 8 years, she filled our lives with joy and mischief and wonder. Sarah paused, looking at Lily, who sat watching with solemn eyes. Emma was one half of a perfect pair. She and Lily were inseparable from birth, finishing each other's sentences, sharing secret languages, and always watching out for each other. Tears flowed freely down Sarah's cheeks now. I believe that bond remains unbroken, even now. Love doesn't end with death. And so today, we're not saying goodbye to Emma. We're saying we love you and we miss you, and we will carry you with us always. When Sarah finished, Lily stood up and walked to her mother's side. Together, they opened the small box, releasing a yellow monarch butterfly that circled once around them before rising up toward the sky. Bye, Emma, Lily whispered. I'll see you in my dreams. The butterfly release marked a turning point in Lily's recovery. Though she still had nightmares and difficult therapy sessions, she began to speak more freely about Emma, sharing memories and stories that helped keep her sister's spirit alive. By midsummer, they had established new routines. Sarah had taken an extended leave from her job as a marketing manager to focus on Lily's recovery. They attended therapy sessions twice a week with Dr. Hayes. They had moved to a new apartment. The old one held too many painful memories. And Lily had started to make the space her own, decorating her room with butterfly stickers and pictures she had drawn. The legal proceedings against Sinclair and Sanders continued, with Sanders cooperating fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. The federal investigation had expanded to include 3 other states and had resulted in the arrest of 12 more individuals connected to the child exploitation ring. Sarah had testified at preliminary hearings, recounting the horror of her daughter's disappearance and Emma's death. She had been spared the most graphic details of what Lily had endured, but the evidence presented left little to the imagination. Despite Dr. Hayes' concerns, Sarah insisted on attending every hearing, needing to see justice unfold with her own eyes. One evening in late July, Sarah received a call from Detective Rivera. "We got him," he said without preamble. "Sinclair took a plea deal. He'll be serving 3 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole. Sanders got 25 years. Sarah sank onto the couch, the phone pressed to her ear. "It's over then." "The trial phase is over," Rivera confirmed. "There might be appeals, but with the evidence we have, they don't stand a chance. He's never getting out, Sarah." "And the others? The ones who bought those magazines? We're still tracking them down. This kind of investigation takes time, but we won't stop until we found every last one of them." After hanging up, Sarah sat for a long time, staring at nothing. She had expected to feel triumphant, vindicated, but instead she felt strangely hollow. Justice for Emma wouldn't bring her back. Justice for Lily couldn't erase what she had endured. She was pulled from her thoughts by Lily's voice. "Mom, are you okay?" Sarah looked up to see her daughter standing in the doorway, clutching Bernie the bear. Lily had gained weight over the past months, and her hair was growing out, the unnatural dye job fading to reveal her natural blonde. In some lights, she still looked heartbreakingly like Emma. "I'm okay, sweetheart. That was Detective Rivera. The bad people who took you and Emma, they're going to jail for a very long time. They can never hurt anyone again." Lily's expression was solemn beyond her years. "Good." She came to sit beside Sarah on the couch. "Dr. Hayes says sometimes I might feel sad, even when good things happen. Is that happening to you?" Sarah smiled through sudden tears, amazed at her daughter's perception. "Yes, I think it is. I'm happy they're going to jail, but I'm still sad about everything that happened." Lily nodded, as if this made perfect sense to her. "Dr. Hayes says that's normal." She leaned against Sarah's side. "Sometimes I dream about Emma. Not scary dreams, but nice ones. We're playing or swimming or just talking. Do you think that's really her, visiting me?" Sarah wrapped an arm around her daughter, pulling her close. "I think that's exactly what it is, and I think she's very proud of how brave you've been." That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Sarah sat on their small balcony, looking up at the stars. For the first time since the twins had disappeared, she felt a tentative sense of peace. Not the peace of forgetting or moving on. She would never forget, never truly move on, but the peace of knowing that she and Lily had survived the unimaginable and would continue to survive. The phone call from Rivera had closed one chapter of their story, but Sarah knew their journey was far from over. There would be more therapy sessions, more nightmares, more difficult conversations as Lily grew older and understood more fully what had happened to her. There would be milestones marked by Emma's absence, birthdays, holidays, graduations, each a fresh reminder of their loss. Yet as Sarah watched a shooting star streak across the night sky, she found herself thinking not of the past 11 months of horror, but of the future stretching before them. A future in which Lily would heal and grow, carrying her sister's memory within her. A future in which they would build something new from the ashes of tragedy. It wouldn't be the life Sarah had planned or the family she had cherished, but it would be theirs, scarred, imperfect, resilient. And for tonight, that was enough. Chapter 6. 2 years after Lily's rescue, life had found a new rhythm. Sarah stood in the kitchen of their suburban home, preparing breakfast as she listened to the sounds of Lily getting ready for school. They had moved out of Boston entirely, seeking a fresh start in a quiet community where nobody knew their story and the media couldn't find them. "Mom, have you seen my science notebook?" Lily called from upstairs. "Check under your art supplies," Sarah called back, smiling to herself. At 10 years old, Lily was becoming more independent every day, though she still struggled with organization, a normal childhood trait that Sarah cherished for its very ordinariness. The doorbell rang, and Sarah went to answer it, finding Detective Rivera, now Chief Rivera, standing on her porch with a small package in his hands. "Miguel," she said warmly, "this is a surprise. Come in." He stepped inside, removing his hat. "Sorry to drop in unannounced. I was in the area for a conference and thought I'd deliver this in person." He handed her the package. The last of Emma's personal effects. The final appeals were denied and the case is officially closed. "I thought you might want these back." Sarah took the package with trembling hands. "Thank you. I didn't expect. I thought everything was lost. Most of it was, but these items were kept as evidence until now." Lily appeared at the bottom of the stairs, her face lighting up when she saw their visitor. "Chief Rivera!" "Hey there, Butterfly," he said, using the nickname he'd given her during those first difficult months after her rescue. "You all ready for the big science fair tomorrow?" Lily nodded excitedly. "I'm doing a project on metamorphosis. Mom helped me build a butterfly habitat, and we've been watching them go from caterpillars to chrysalises to butterflies. We're releasing them tomorrow after the fair." "Sounds impressive," Rivera said, winking at Sarah. "I bet you'll win first prize." After Rivera left, promising to visit again soon, Sarah set the package on the kitchen counter. She would open it later when Lily was at school. Some aspects of their past still needed to be approached carefully. The day proceeded normally. She drove Lily to school, went to her part-time job at a local community center, and did some shopping before picking Lily up in the afternoon. The package sat untouched until late that night after Lily had gone to bed. Sitting at the kitchen table, Sarah finally opened it. Inside were Emma's butterfly hair clips, slightly tarnished from their time in the ocean, a small bracelet with her name engraved on it, and wrapped in protective plastic, a water-damaged notebook with butterflies on the cover. With tears in her eyes, Sarah gently opened the notebook. Most of the pages were ruined, the ink washed away by seawater, but a few entries remained partially legible. Emma's childish handwriting was unmistakable, documenting what appeared to be a butterfly-watching journal she had started just before the cruise. On one of the last pages, Emma had drawn two stick figures holding hands with butterfly wings attached to their backs. Beneath it, she had written, "Me and Lily are butterfly twins. We start as the same egg but become our own butterflies." Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. Even before the tragedy, Emma had understood something profound about identity and transformation that many adults never grasped. A soft voice came from the doorway. "Mom, are you okay?" Sarah looked up to see Lily standing there, hair tousled from sleep. "I'm sorry, sweetie. Did I wake you?" Lily shook her head, coming to stand beside Sarah. "I had a dream about Emma. She was trying to tell me something." Her eyes fell on the items from the package. "What's that?" Sarah hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Some of Emma's things that Chief Rivera brought back. From the suitcase." Lily's eyes widened, but she didn't recoil. Instead, she reached for the notebook, her fingers hovering just above it without touching. Her butterfly journal. She was so excited about starting it. Sarah was surprised. "You remember that?" Lily nodded. "She got it the day before we left for the cruise. She said we were going to document all the butterflies we saw in the Caribbean." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Emma always thought everything was about butterflies." Sarah put an arm around Lily's shoulders, drawing her close. "Are you okay seeing these things?" Lily considered this seriously. "I think so. Dr. Hayes says memories can hurt, but they're important. They're how we keep people alive in our hearts." After 2 years of therapy, Lily had developed an emotional vocabulary that sometimes astounded Sarah. Though she still had occasional nightmares and certain triggers could send her into panic attacks, she had made remarkable progress. "Look," Lily said, pointing to the drawing of the butterfly twins. "That's us." "Yes," Sarah said softly. "She drew you both with butterfly wings." Lily was quiet for a moment, then said, "I think that's what she was trying to tell me in my dream." "What do you mean?" "That she's still changing, still becoming something new. That's what happens to butterflies, right? They don't really die, they transform." Sarah's heart swelled with a bittersweet mixture of pride and sorrow. "That's a beautiful way to think about it." Lily yawned, suddenly looking very much like the 10-year-old child she was, despite her profound words. "Can I keep her butterfly clips for the science fair tomorrow? For good luck?" "Of course," Sarah said, kissing the top of her head. "I think Emma would like that very much." The next morning, Lily carefully pinned the butterfly clips in her hair before they headed to the science fair. Her project stood out among the typical volcanoes and solar system models, a meticulously documented butterfly habitat with chrysalises at various stages of development and several newly emerged monarchs waiting to be released. As Sarah watched her daughter confidently explain metamorphosis to the judges, she felt a wave of emotion so powerful it nearly brought her to her knees. This child, who had endured unimaginable trauma, who had lost her twin and a piece of her childhood, had somehow emerged from her own dark chrysalis as a resilient, compassionate person. The healing wasn't complete, it might never be, but standing there watching Lily shine, Sarah knew they had transformed their tragedy into something else. Not something better, not something they would have chosen, but something with its own kind of beauty and meaning. After Lily won first prize, to no one's surprise but her own, they took the butterfly habitat to a quiet corner of the park behind the school. Together, they opened the netting, allowing the monarchs to take flight. "Goodbye," Lily whispered as the last one, a vibrant yellow one that reminded them both of Emma, fluttered skyward. "Safe travels." As they watched the butterflies disappear into the blue, Lily slipped her hand into Sarah's. "Do you think Emma can see us now?" she asked. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand, looking up at the vast sky. "I think Emma is always with us, watching over us like these butterflies, sometimes close enough to touch, sometimes flying free, but always part of our lives." Lily nodded, satisfied with this answer. "I'm going to be a lepidopterist when I grow up," she announced, "someone who studies butterflies." "Emma would love that," Sarah said, her voice catching slightly. As they walked back to the car, Sarah reflected on their journey. From the darkest moment of her life on that beach in North Carolina to this ordinary, beautiful day with her surviving daughter, they had traveled a path of grief, healing, and transformation that would continue for the rest of their lives. There would always be an Emma-shaped hole in their family. There would always be scars from what Lily had endured. But there would also be science fairs and butterfly releases, first dances and graduation days, moments of ordinary joy that seemed impossible during those 11 months of searching and the dark days that followed. Sarah thought of Emma's drawing, the butterfly twins, separate yet connected. One still in this world, one transformed into something beyond human understanding. Both still beloved, still part of the same story. As she started the car, Lily carefully removed Emma's butterfly clips from her hair and placed them in the small memorial box they kept on their mantle at home, a place for special treasures that connected them to Emma. "Mom," Lily said as they drove home, "I think I'm ready to tell my story now, to help other kids like me." Sarah glanced at her daughter, surprised. They had been approached many times by advocacy groups asking if Lily would share her experience to help other trafficking victims, but Sarah had always declined, protecting Lily's privacy. "Are you sure, sweetheart? You don't have to do that." Lily nodded, her expression serious beyond her years. "Dr. Hayes says that sometimes helping others is the best way to heal ourselves, and Emma would want me to help people. She always did." Sarah felt a surge of pride so fierce it momentarily took her breath away. "If you're sure, then we'll find a way to do it safely." As they pulled into their driveway, the afternoon sun caught the butterfly wind chimes hanging from their porch. Another tribute to Emma and symbol of their ongoing transformation. "You know what Dr. Hayes told me once?" Lily said as they got out of the car. "She said trauma changes you forever, but it doesn't have to define you. You get to decide what your story means." Sarah looked at her daughter, this wise, resilient, beautiful child who had somehow found light in the darkest places. "And what do you think our story means, Lily?" Lily considered this seriously, then smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes in a way that had once seemed impossible. "I think it means that love is stronger than anything, even death, even bad people, even really terrible things that happen." She looked up at the sky where the released butterflies had disappeared. "And I think it means that Emma's still with us, just in a different way, like she's our guardian butterfly." Sarah put her arm around her daughter's shoulders as they walked toward their home, not the life they had planned, but the one they had built from broken pieces. "Guardian butterfly," she repeated softly. "I think Emma would love that title very much." Together they stepped into their house carrying both their grief and their hope, their past and their future. Butterfly twins forever, one visible, one transformed, both still flying. Wow, what a story! And there is more coming. Don't forget to subscribe to not miss a new stories.